After narrowly escaping a man-eating Cyclops, Odysseus and his exhausted, traumatized crew desperately needed a safe harbor. They found one on the island of Aeolia, hidden behind a towering wall of solid bronze. Inside those walls lived Aeolus, the keeper of the winds. Instead of another monster, the crew found a gracious host. For an entire month, they ate, drank, and slept in total safety, allowing themselves to forget the horrors they just survived. When it was finally time to leave, Aeolus gave Odysseus a parting gift. It was an unassuming bag, stitched from the hide of an ox, and tied tightly shut with a silver cord. This bag was essentially a divine cheat code for ancient seafaring. Aeolus gathered every ship-destroying storm gale and locked them inside. There was one exception. Aeolus left the gentle west wind completely free. That single, steady breeze was designed to push Odysseus's fleet in a straight, uninterrupted line directly toward Ithaca. The keeper of the winds attached a single, absolute condition to this gift. The bag must remain sealed. Opening it under any circumstances would unleash total chaos. Odysseus took this warning to heart, but he made a critical decision regarding his crew. He chose to tie the bag to the mast and guard it entirely alone, refusing to sleep for 9 straight days, while keeping the men completely in the dark about what was inside. By keeping the bag's contents a secret, Odysseus gave his men nothing to focus on but their own growing curiosity. He was protecting the gift, but in doing so, he left his exhausted crew alone with their own suspicions. For 9 days, the magic worked flawlessly. On the 10th day, the coastline of Ithaca finally appeared on the horizon. The crew could see smoke rising from the familiar chimneys on the hillsides. Believing the journey was finally secure, Odysseus allowed his physical exhaustion to override his vigilance. He closed his eyes and drifted to sleep. The moment their captain was unconscious, the atmosphere on the ship shifted. Without clear answers about the mysterious cargo tied to the mast, the crew's lingering trauma mutated into unchecked suspicion. A specific rumor began to spread quickly among the sailors. They convinced themselves that the ox-hide bag was stuffed with gold, silver, and jewels from Aeolus's palace, treasure their captain intended to keep for himself. Years of shared hardship had forged a deep sense of entitlement among these men. They felt they had earned a share of the reward, and that grievance dissolved their loyalty to a captain who refused to trust them with the truth. Driven by greed and resentment, the men crept toward the mast. With trembling hands, they undid the silver cord and pulled the ox-hide bag open. Almost instantly, every single storm Aeolus had bottled up burst free all at once in an explosive, violent eruption. The sudden release of air tore through the sails and snapped the rigging. The immense physical force grabbed the ship and violently flung it backward across the water, away from the island. Odysseus jolted awake to the sound of screaming sailors and snapping wood. He looked out and saw the shores of his home rapidly shrinking into the distance. The psychological break was immediate. For a brief, terrible moment, Odysseus considered throwing himself into the sea, unable to stomach the unfairness of losing Ithaca when it was only miles away. The sheer velocity of the storm defied nature. The merciless winds pushed the entire fleet backward along their exact path, erasing 9 full days of steady sailing in a matter of hours. The fleet was now retreating across the same waters they had just conquered, undone by the very hands that were supposed to be rowing them home. When the winds finally died down, the exhausted crew looked around to see exactly where they had landed. They were right back where they started, staring up at the floating island of Aeolia. Humiliated and desperate, Odysseus went straight to the palace. He begged Aeolus for a second chance, hoping the keeper of the winds might provide a replacement bag to get them back on track. But the warm, hospitable host was gone. Aeolus reacted with absolute disgust and raw anger at the crew's self-inflicted disaster. Aeolus delivered a blunt judgment. He declared that any leader whose own men sabotage him this completely must be cursed by fate, and he refused to offer divine assistance to a cursed man. Odysseus and his surviving men were banished on the spot. With zero divine protection to guide them, They were forced to take up their heavy wooden oars and row away into a bleak sea. The journey ahead now required every mile to be earned by hand. Without the west wind, the crew faced a slow crawl toward cannibal giants, deadly enchantresses, and the literal gates of the underworld. The permanent loss of that gift reveals a grim truth about human frailty. A single failure of communication can unleash a lifetime of misfortune, and once those winds are out, there is no putting them back.